see you. I hope you're excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Jack Ring. I'm a sophomore here studying political science and theology. And I've been given the privilege of introducing Dr. Patt. I met Dr. Patt my fall semester, my freshman year. Kind of decided on a whim towards the end of registration that I wanted to take an ancient Roman art history course. I had never taken an art history class, but I knew I liked art and history and Rome, so I figured it would work out. And it did work out. It was wonderfully difficult and exciting in the way that only a new subject can be. And Dr. Patt was every bit the eccentric scholar that class needed. And you could just tell that, and you'll be able to tell very quickly, that she has a real passion for her work and for her scholarship. But more than that, she really has a passion for producing scholars. She poured a lot into me as a young mind, and she did the same for many other kids in that class. We still talk about it very favorably. It really is a blast. You guys are going to have a blast. You're going to learn a lot. So I'm just going to give the formal introduction to Dr. Patt, if you don't mind. Professor Patt holds degrees in classics from Stanford University and in art history from the Courtauld Institute of Art and Emory University, where she finished her PhD in 2022. After completing a postdoctoral research fellowship at Princeton University, she joined Notre Dame in 2024 as an assistant professor in the Department of Art, Art History, and Design, and concurrent assistant professor in classics. Her scholarship aims to reveal the real historiographic stakes of studying art history in today's rapidly technologizing society by asserting that art, as a distinctly human endeavor, can illuminate how we understand ourselves and our world. Concerns at the heart of humanistic inquiry. Professor Patt specializes in the art of the ancient Mediterranean. Her research has been published in the preeminent journals of this field, the Art Bulletin and the American Journal of Archaeology. She is presently completing a book on Roman portraiture that will offer a new history of the very idea of representation grounded in absence and desire. Professor Patt, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jack, for that introduction, and thanks to the College of Arts and Letters for inviting me to participate in this crash course series for all of you. I feel really excited to be able to get to stand up here and share with you one of my lessons and sort of an overview of another class that I've developed since coming to Notre Dame, A History of Art in 25 Objects. And I'm just going to say about the introduction, that was a very special class because not only was it Jack's first semester of college, it was my first semester at Notre Dame. So we were all I will always remember those 16 students who stuck with me as I was figuring out on the ground what to do as a professor. So I really appreciated the introduction. So thank you. Thanks to everyone for being here. It's a beautiful day today, and you've chosen to spend 60 minutes with me. So I really owe a thanks to you. Who's come from around town to watch the game? A couple locals? Who's come from out of state? Oh, okay. Where are some of my visitors from?
Los Angeles.
LA. Oh, I'm from Santa Monica. Okay. Arkansas. Florida. New Jersey. I did my stint in New Jersey, as you heard. Okay, cool. Anyone from out of the country? Yeah? Canada, okay, cool. Any other Canadians? So people have come from far and wide. No transatlantic yet, but you never know. In order to join us today to think about Notre Dame football. Now, today, I'm going to show you this idea that in my class, A History of Art in 25 Objects, to South Bend come works of art and architecture from all corners of the globe. So what happens is, in this class, which is basically, it's meant to be an introduction to art history. And when they asked me to develop this class, I thought, there is no way you can cover everything in 15 weeks. I'm not even going to try. And so I'd rather do this where I think about, how does art connect to the human experience? And what sort of big themes can art help us think with? What questions can art help us address that are intrinsic to the human experience? And then I pick works of art and architecture that are from all corners of the globe. So this is the map that we ended up with last time I taught this class, spring semester, and the little blue pins are the eponymous 25 objects, but I have to admit, you learn more than just about 25 objects in the course. I bring in other works for comparison, and those are what the little raspberry dots represent. So just as you have come from far-flung corners of this continent, or most of it, from Arkansas, California, we've got Florida, Canada, so on and so forth, these works of art come from all over. And these were the 25 that I ended up with for themes such as art and the other, art in the natural world, art and ecology, in the service of justice, manifesting power. Those are some of the kinds of themes that we talk about in this class. But I have to say, as I said, I'm pretty new to Notre Dame. Who here is an alumnus or an alumna? Who do we think wins the contests of, I'm pretty fresh, I'm really new, my association with Notre Dame is probably among the most recent in the room. Who do we think wins for longest connection to Notre Dame? Yeah, couple of the alumni in the back.
Freshman in 1959.
Wow, bravo. Yeah, so because I'm pretty new here and I haven't figured everything out, I don't have decades worth of experience of knowing what Notre Dame students are like. These were my objects last time I taught the class, but teaching isn't static. And so even as I'm reteaching this class this semester, I have to say some of these did not make the cut to come back. Because sometimes I realized certain topics excited my students more, and I wanted to lean into that. And those objects definitely were going to get to come back, but there needed to be a flexibility to understand what readings my students were really responding to, what activities. And so there's sort of a flexibility here. That not only am I trying to teach my students that art isn't static, but teaching isn't either. Even if we think, gosh, this is like the expert speaking. No, there's always other possibilities. I wanted to show you some of the possibilities I wanted to teach that didn't make the cut last semester. The one in the upper right, though, I am going to put this semester because you can see there's a huge hole in Siberia. When I was designing this class, I really wanted to try to have as much coverage across the globe as possible. And when the last day of class came in spring semester, I realized, oh gosh, there's a large swath of Eurasia that I've completely omitted. I need something Siberian next time. So the point is that, my students are learning, I'm learning, we're all learning from each other. I'm going to give you the lesson today for the theme that has the object that's my favorite of the 25 objects. Yes, I do have a favorite. But we need to start with a question before we get to that. What is art anyway? It's a very, very good question. So I'm going to ask my kind assistant to pass out index cards and, for those who need them, writing utensils.
Oh, joy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So Jack is going to send the cards down, like just a chunk, and send them down. And I want you, don't write your name on the card. And if you have a pen or a pencil, that's excellent, because I don't have dozens of those. I want you to try to write me a definition. Okay, what is art? And we're going to take a few minutes silently. Don't need to confer with your neighbor just yet. What do you think is art? So that's kind of the idea. It's just to think about it for a few quiet minutes once you get your index card. And I'll get some for the front at the very end. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Are there more than 100 people here? No. I only have 100 index cards, but everyone's going to sort of think you're writing your definition studiously. You need a pen. Yeah. share your pens with your neighbors, but keep your ideas to thoughts to yourself. Everyone have an index card who wants full class participation. Everyone should have an index card if you'd like. There we go. Yeah, thank you, Jack. Jack didn't know this was happening. He did not know he was going to be getting his cardio today running around the classroom, but I really appreciate it. Send the pens down. They will eventually make their way back to me. But what is art? If you opened the dictionary, the Webster's or the Oxford English Dictionary, what do you think we'd see? What do you think you'd read? No. So I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds to think about this, and then you'll see what we're going to do with this. Pens. Can people... no. No. See, I didn't realize how well attended this was going to be because it's such nice weather. Which sector needs a pen? Okay. It's such nice weather that I thought, gosh, surely no one's going to want to hear about like boring art stuff. Okay. But if you have a writing utensil to share with your neighbor, that's good. But here's the idea. How many people have managed to write down a definition? Okay. Everyone is going to stand up. Now, here's the beauty of this. We're all getting cardio today. I would like you to exchange your index card with someone, but you're not going to stop there. So let's say Dr. Carter gives her definition is she's going to give it to Dr. Collins, and then he might go across the room and exchange it with our fabulous alum of freshman year 1959. Then he's got a card, and suddenly you end up, after multiple exchanges, you have no idea whose you have. So we've created a completely anonymous, safe space to have our discussion, where there are, maybe if you feel like you're going to open the dictionary and someone in the back said something stupid, but you don't know who said something stupid. So then we all feel kind of safer. So go scramble the cards. I'm sorry, you didn't get a card.
Okay. Oh, don't worry about it at all.
I'm going to lose all my pens, but do you want to make a bet?
I thought about that.
Yeah, activity, even like a nice stretch.
Well, it will take some time. I basically grew up Santa Monica too.
Oh, really?
I was a transit. I live in Los Angeles now. Lower Bel Air.
Okay, yeah, I grew up between San Vicente and Montana. Yeah.
I lived at 12th in California for many years, and then 21st and Montana.
Oh, wow. I was on 19. Yeah. Okay. Everyone has a sufficiently anonymized card, right? No. Yes? Okay. Take a minute and digest what ended up in your hands. Take a minute to read someone else's definition of art. Okay. Raise your hand if you have a definition you think, wow, I think that's a solid definition. I agree. In the back. Yeah, share with us.
Whatever you want it to be.
Ooh, okay. Wide open. Okay, who else has a card that resonates with them? Also in the back, and then I'll get to the front.
This one is a human expression of beauty or passion.
Ooh, I also like that. So we can begin to, if we're putting definitions on this, there's a sense that we have some aesthetic parameters, some emotional parameters, and there's this human idea about it. On the other hand, we could have it whatever you want it to be. There's a hand up here.
An individual's expression of an experience or reality in an interpretive way, in a way others may or may not understand and appreciate.
Ooh, yeah. So again, there's an idea of intent. There's an idea that it might be completely over all of our heads. Okay, other cards. Anyone have let's take this one first before I ask the next question.
An experience of one's mind, heart, and skills.
Oh, So, okay, let's think about what that contributes to our definition. We've got an idea of skill here now, which hadn't really come on the table. We'd had the bit of the idea of the heart and mind with the emotions, the passion, and okay. Anyone get a card, they look at it and they say, gosh, I'm scratching my head here. I'm not sure about this. This is okay. That's why they're all anonymous. You don't know which classmate of yours you're calling out. We're all, yeah, brave.
Art is the product of obsession.
Ooh, okay, so you don't, this did not resonate with you for your definition.
I just don't understand exactly what they mean by it.
Yeah, it to me indicates that the idea that there's a single genius artist who's out there in his studio, fixating on an idea and maybe fine-tuning down to the last paintbrush stroke for 20 years, and in the dark, the sort of starving mad genius artist, and you're obsessed with creating your masterpiece. That's where my mind is going with this. I might have completely misinterpreted someone's definition, but I think people tend to associate obsessiveness and perfectionism with making art, because often these are qualities we associate with a genius, and we often associate genius with artists. So that would be my guess of where that was coming from. I want to show you 3 works of art. Oh, spoiler, I'm not going to give you a definition, sorry. Because I agree. I agree with our very first hand. It's whatever you want it to be. And in fact, the second day of this class, my students do a reading that has a quote from someone. And the quote basically says, the name of the game now is that someone is going to produce something or find something. Very key there, that it could be a found object. Show it to you and say, I dare you to tell me why this isn't a work of art. And there can be some reason, again, going back to the card up here, we might not all understand it, but there might be some underlying argument that this person who's proposing the dare, yeah, okay, so that's kind of where I'm at. I really want my students to think capaciously about what a work of art could potentially be. So I'm not actually going to give you a definition, I'm sorry. But what I am going to show you is 3 works of art, or 3 objects rather, 3 things. Let's go real generic. 3 things you find in art museums. These are all found in art museums. An archaeological museum in the south of France, the brand new Grand Egyptian Museum outside the Pyramids of Giza, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan. And I like to open this class, A History of Art in 25 Objects, with these 3, just to problematize what we conceive of as art. Now, is this hypocritical? I've just told you everything is art. What's the catch? I want to give you some ideas of how things are not as straightforward as they seem to be. So we have this exquisite Greek vase, item number 1, thing number 1. So this is a vase done earlier before they changed technologies. You may have seen black figure Greek vase painting and red figure. This is the earlier chronologically of the 2, and it's by someone who signs his name, a painter we know his name, Exekius. He is lauded, again, speaking of these geniuses, he's lauded as one of the most skillful artists who painted vases in ancient Greece. And I'm going to show you a detail of this. This is really quite beautiful. The scene is taken from the Iliad, and it's a hero preparing to commit suicide out of shame. He has not been awarded the armor of Achilles, and this to him, despite the fact that Ajax was such a great warrior and he thought that that honor would have been bestowed upon him, it doesn't happen. So out of the enormity of this shame, he is burying his sword to fall on it and end his life. And you see this really poignant composition here that Exekius has made for us on the body of this vase. you have the setup of Ajax's armor as if it's almost another human figure quietly watching what's about to happen, bearing witness. That helmet, you can almost imagine there's a person there. The same with the palm tree that emotively curves forward and focuses your attention on the poignant scene at hand. Now, I think this is exquisite and I think this is amazing, but what I want to tell you is that even though we routinely see Greek vases in all kinds of museums all over the world, from the Vatican to the Louvre to the Met, even to a few on display in our Racklin Murphy here. If you go into the teaching gallery, there are 2 on display in the teaching gallery. You have to go through the African gallery and you'll find them, okay? So everywhere. The Greeks had a word for art, techne. This is what we translate when we're trying to translate ancient Greek. And we see this word, this is what we can come up with as what they had to describe what we would call an artwork. The problem is techne was more encompassing than just that. It also means cunning, craft, even a little bit of deviousness. You can hear this is where technology comes from. There's an industriousness to it. There can be a skill to it. So the problem is we have, for better or worse, because of the way art history developed as a discipline, come to privilege these vase paintings as really fine works of art, when the Greeks themselves would not have called Exekias an artistic genius. He would have been the word for what the Greek word is called bonossos. Bonossoi, that's the plural of it, these were kind of mere craftsmen. There was a downgrading of sort of vulgar everyday craft and the fine sculpture or so on and so forth. But because we don't have the kind of paintings that the Greeks would have called works of art, they don't survive. Why? Ideas. Why do they not survive for the most part? Like panel paintings or paintings on canvas supports. Yeah, there's a hand in the back.
The materials didn't survive.
Exactly, they're biodegradable. So all of the supports, because we do know there were painters. Apelles, for instance, famous painter. We don't have any of Apelles' paintings because, like you said, these are on biodegradable supports. We don't have them. So when people hundreds of years later began to invent art history as a discipline, and they needed something to stand in for painting, they got the vases, but this was not what the Greeks themselves would have considered as art. So I show this to the students to begin to problematize, okay, what do we do with this? There are cultures that we're going to explore that don't even have a word for art. We need to sort of be flexible in understanding that, like I said at the beginning of class, art isn't static. And so maybe the Greeks would have thought of this one way, and we think about it another way. Another sort of item that this can of worms opens up for us is this debate between fine art and craft. That persists for centuries and centuries. And I would say it's still kind of going on today. You can hear it in the terms decorative arts. It implies in a way that furniture or tapestries or any of these deck arts somehow are not on the same plane as fine arts. In German, it's even worse. Some of these things are called Kleinkunst, little art. So there's whether it means it or not, there's a kind of degrading of what we see as craft, often textile work or woodworking, some of these other less traditional, not a monumental painting or sculpture. And this is a problem because sometimes those objects were very valued by certain kinds of societies, but we have not come to value them historically in the same way. So I show you. Now we don't have an artist. We have an unrecorded artist, probably multiple artists whose names have been lost to time because we are looking at the innermost of King Tut's coffins. Now, this is pretty exquisite. The craftsmanship here, all of the layers of the enamels all inset in the gold. I mean, really striking use of color, striking use of line. This feels like a work of art to me, right? And it's made out of precious materials, gold, enamels, lapis, some of these stones that are going to communicate immense value, right? He's the king, he's the pharaoh, so he should have the most opulent of resting places. Here's the catch, resting place. Now, King Tut's body was actually removed from this. You can pay a ticket price, a special ticket, to see King Tut's mummy if you go to Giza. The problem is in so many art museums, those people have not been removed from their coffins, from their resting places. These two make it really apparent. And so we've normalized going to a great museum and seeing, they fascinate me. I mean, I think a lot of little kids grow up like being really curious about the Egyptian pyramids and mummies. These sarcophagi are full of so many little details. They're really visually stimulating. They're just always a hit. Whenever I take someone to an art museum, they're curious about ancient Egypt. The problem is sometimes we're denying the reality of these. And the question is, how many millennia do you need to be dead to become a work of art? Not funny, not funny. No. So here's the thing. Some museums are beginning to recognize this. Then they put labels. I'm showing you here a couple of placards from the Brooklyn Museum. The Brooklyn Museum's Ancient Egyptian Funerary Gallery contains human remains. Please treat them with respect. You should have to stop and read these before you get to open the door. Then they name them, and then they say there's a preserved body of someone whose name we don't have. There's a bit of an explanation about collecting practices, and then, okay, why has the Brooklyn Museum decided we're going to do this? We're going to continue to display because they're going to display covered human remains, quote, akin to the ancient Egyptian practice. We hope that visitors will remember these individuals and gain a better understanding of ancient Egyptian art, religion, and science. Our intent is also to inspire thoughtful conversations about our own cultural practices surrounding death. Okay, so they're at least acknowledging we should come to these galleries with a sense of respect. These people never could have conceived of what's happened to them now. They are not things. They were persons with lives and loved ones. And so I say this because from day one in my class, not only are we complicating and asking, okay, what is art? But I want it to be clear that the ethical stakes of art history are actually quite real and quite deep. I don't think any of us would be really, well, you never know. People, I shouldn't speak so fast. People who donate their bodies to science, for instance, you know? But it's not that there's a final verdict on this. It's more, I want to problematize. I want to open people's eyes to things that we always might think of because they're in an art museum. This one is the one from the Met. Now this, I want to explain some of the words here. This is from the Congo group, so this is modern. It's parts of modern Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, part of southern Gabon. And I put this up here because so often when we're talking about art history, people talk about Africa as if it were a country. How many countries? Idea. How many countries are in Africa? Don't count. Anyone know? 54. 54. And some of them, and some that are not recognized at the UN level, some semi-autonomous or semi-recognized entities as well. But there are, dozens of entities that are countries, and yet so often we're talking about, oh, African art. So part of what I want to do is to remind people, anchoring us in space, where are we? We are with the Congo peoples, and they had this idea and have this idea of magic, of medicine. This, speaking of words that can have multiple meanings, Nkisi here means spirit or spiritual, but it also can mean medicine. And so an Nkisi Nkondi power figure is, seems to us, it looks like a sculpture. Okay, we see that it's made by an artist. Okay, so far so good. But there's this other person credited in the artist line, an Nganga, right? This person is the spiritual healer and diviner. And the fact that the Met is recognizing this isn't just a work of art, this was actually actively something used for warding off bad spirits. They would pack, this practitioner, the Nganga, would pack the center. You can kind of see where there's a hole with all kinds of different materials. That's why we got such a long list there. Wood, iron, resin, ceramic, plant fire, textile, pigment. They could be packed with medicines or meaningful materials that were meant to communicate messages. So the Nganga might put white soil inside the power figure. That was meant by the color to evoke death. And so that was, you would put it in there if you wanted to communicate with the realm of the spiritual and deceased ancestors. So all of the materials had meanings. The problem is, if we're going back to our idea from the Ezekias vase of biodegradable materials, some of these figures are not structurally stable. So we all want to conserve them and stabilize them so we can continue to admire them, their expressiveness, their role in shaping Congo culture. But even though from our sort of standpoint where you want the work of art to live forever and to be stable and preserved, I show this to my students to raise the point that, hey, maybe this had soil in it or plant fiber or blood, and it wasn't really meant to be stabilized. It was okay if it actually decayed. And was not preserved for us forever, because that was not the intent behind it. And I just want to put this idea out there that we can look at things that might be problematized as works of art, but I don't think anyone would question that these are works of art, and these were made as responses but influenced by such figures as the Nkisi Nkondi figures. So I like to draw connections between different media, different times and places, and we can see these acts of reception, these creative engagements with other works of art. You can also have reception of different poems, literature, stuff like opera. This helps reinforce the idea that art isn't dead and static. Okay, so how are we doing on time? It's time to get to my favorite topic. Okay. So I told you that the class has themes and that there's sort of an eponymous object for each theme. The theme that I chose to share with you today is kind of a downer. I know, we should maybe choose something happier. But I wanted to talk to you about memory, legacy, and ultimately death, because if anyone remembers from Jack's intro, I work on Roman portraits. And so this is actually not only my favorite object of the class, it's just my favorite genre, period. And so I thought, why not get to share that with you guys? But first, we have many, many, many out-of-town visitors, as we heard at the start of class, from the far corners of Canada, and so on and so forth, and even some locals from maybe even Mishawaka. So when you come to Notre Dame, when you're visiting Notre Dame, I want you to leave this room and start opening your eyes. We have monuments that are working to promote the legacy of either historical individuals important to the history of Notre Dame. Father Sorin, there's a great statue of moose grouse on a bench outside the stadium. There are actually, who's going in through the Rockney gate? Who's going in through the Parsagian gate? Seriously, you're all going to the game tomorrow, right? Someone shout out, do you know what gate you're going through? They're all named. They're all named after one of the winningest coaches. So they're all named, except for the student gates, because you got to leave one for Freeman. Sorry, we want to win an title, okay? Just say it. They are named after the coaches who've won the national titles. Notice this when you go in tomorrow. There are statues of the winning coaches. And just like a good old Roman portrait statue would have on its base, you have the accomplishments recorded here. For instance, Rockney. We've got his years of his championships, his record, not his life dates, but his dates for when he was head coach. And what's so fascinating about this and how this relates to Roman statues, there's even a plaque on the side that tells you who gave the funds to put up the Rockney statue. Because this, too, was always very important in ancient Mediterranean society. These were part of a cycle, sort of social interaction of giving a gift, first, someone had to do something for the community. So Rockney does something for the community by elevating Notre Dame, winning championships. The community wants to thank him for this and perpetuate his memory, put up a statue, but we also want to acknowledge the people who make this possible, the funders. So I just want to point out that there are plaques and little tiny memorials on really the micro scale. Rockney, Parsagian, Lee, these might be our heroes on the big institutional scale, but I want you to start looking at the benches and the trees. There are micro monuments on a real familial or intimate scale here at Notre Dame that you'll begin to see more than just the big shots are being commemorated. There's memory being made across campus in all kinds of ways. And so Roman portraits, which is what I work on, these were really intimately bound up and entangled with the mechanics of memory. I want to tell you, kind of like what we talked about in passing with the coaches, you all have sort of a collective memory and idea as this social entity of Notre Dame fans, alumni, students. We all as a group together know about these individuals. But then there's going to be cultural memory. There's individual memories, right? There's societal memories. And so I want you to remember that, no pun intended, that even though I'm here talking to you about memory, legacy, and death, memories might be a better word, because memory is not homogeneous. Memory can really shift depending on whose it is and the constellation of the people or the culture making that up. But I'm not here to give you a lesson on memory studies. We're here to talk about loved ones. Okay, you're like, what is happening? It's this crazy screenshot from my phone. So we have our phones today. And as you might know, the technology is pretty scary. It can even identify the animals, which are the individual cats. Yes, these are my cats, or they were my cats before I moved to Rome. And you can walk around in your pocket with you, thousands if you wanted, hundreds or thousands of pictures, portraits of your favorite people. You know, I've got the favorite ones, but then there are all the other people you encounter in your life. And you look, if you open your photos, you'll see the little people and animal album. I'm just weird and have my phone in Italian, but it's the little people and animal album. And you realize, okay, I really miss Nari. Nari lives in Los Angeles. I'm going to take out this picture, and I can look, and I can remember when we were having coffee on Montana Avenue in 2017. Good. Okay, so I have an immediate reminder. The problem is, you know, we're spoiled. Our phones are so sophisticated. We can carry around thousands of images of ones we love. But I think it's important to remember the advent of photography made this possible for us to have these small reminders on our persons, even in our wallets. This was still a thing when I went to school. I mean, who here is a grandparent? Do people still do this? Do you get the tiny wallet sizes of your grandkids anymore? I know. So this was something back in the day, right? I'm like, my students don't necessarily get this reference. And you're like, back in the day, in the 90s. In the 90s, we would sit for school picture day, and you'd get the little wallet size, and you'd cut them up, and you'd send them to your grandparents or your aunts and uncles, and then they'd go into your wallet, right? So the idea is why? Because we all miss people. We can't always be with all of our loved ones. Sometimes they're absent to us. They're on a trip. They're studying abroad. They're off at university. They are in another world, right? They're at another life. They're not with us on this earth. And so photography helped make the ability to conjure up the memory of the loved ones who we really want to make present to us in a really democratized and effortless way. But what do you do before photography? Right? So the marble portraits that I showed you in that gallery installation, these, I think, if I asked people to close their eyes and I'm going to imagine a Roman portrait, I bet you $100. A lot of people would think of something like this, right? White marble bust, often someone important. We've got the first emperor here. There's another possibility. Portraits were not just meant to serve as the ancient equivalents of celebrating the really important figures like Rockne, Barsagian, Lee, hold on, I'm going to get it. Holtz. I'm always forgetting. I'm really trying to learn them all. Again, it's only my second year here. We're like, there's a learning curve. We're going to get there. But again, the unnamed gate, it's for Freeman, I'm telling you. But there was another strand of Roman portraiture being made at the same time as these really imposing, monumental, often marble or bronze sculptures of the bigwigs, of the emperors, of his family, of the politicians, the really important people. There were oftentimes smaller scale, micro scale, right? Just like I'm going to ask you, someone's going to report to me on their homework that they're going to leave and they're going to look at the micro monuments, the plaques under the trees and on the benches that are commemorating people who, yes, the audience may be much smaller, but that person was still important. So scale is everything here. And I show you this. This is this handy luggage tag. When you become a fellow of the Medieval Institute at Notre Dame, you get all of this swag. I know, who knew that there was a Medieval Institute luggage tag? I didn't, but I'm telling you guys. Anyway, you see how big it is? Just a bit bigger than the palm of my hand. And I want, hold on. I'm going to go out of order here because I'm watching the time and I want to make sure there's time for Q&A. I want you to look at this portrait. This is smaller than the luggage tag, right? This literally fits in the palm of the hand. And so what I believe in, I think, ways that you can commemorate legacy and remember loved ones is in the same way that we used to have the wallet photos, or maybe you would have a locket with someone's hair in it, or a locket with someone's photo, that the small scale intimate portraits that you could have with you, even wear on your body, and I am wearing a ring that has a portrait on it. A friend of mine who knows I do this research got it for me when I finished my PhD. But the idea, this was not something I'm making up. There's a very famous Roman poet, Ovid, writes some dirty stuff. Not great. Writes some dirty stuff maybe about the emperor's relations. No, not good. He gets exiled in 8 CE, okay? So he is kicked out of Rome, And again, if we're talking about distance and we're talking about missing people, Ovid now has to be on the fringes of the Black Sea, probably pretty cold, not Mediterranean climate, but he writes a series of poems, a series of lamentations that reflect on this exile period, and in one of them, he addresses his friends back in Rome, and he says to them, as if he were speaking to them, I want you to look at the image of me that is engraved on this gold signet ring. I want you to look at it and I want you to remember me. And I, over here on the fringes of the Black Sea, take comfort. We all take comfort that this image can stand in for me and connect me and remind you of me, and then I think about this act. It's really kind of beautiful and sad. But the point is that there's something about the small scale here that enables us to foster intimacy. Part of it can be because it could be literally touching us, right? Touching our bodies, or that we could pick it up and have an interaction with it, right? We could engage something closely. Small things demand close looking. In a way, you might think, oh, it's so small, it's insignificant. I'm the boss of it, but actually, the tiny size of this demands you, its physical size, demands of you that you engage with it closely. And so, in a way, the portrait begins to take on aspects of power and agency in this relationship with the viewer. I want to show you what's kind of amazing about this. I mean, first of all, I should talk for like 30 seconds because I do want to save time for Q&A. These things are miracles. I mean, again, look how small it is, but what are we actually looking at here, right? So this idea, pothos, this is just for the word nerds in the class. I'm a word nerd. It's because I was a classics major, so I can't give up the love of Greek and Latin. But that's this very specific kind of love that they had this word to describe, love for someone who isn't here, physically, or they're deceased, this longing, this love born of absence. So I think about these portraits in a way as portraits born of this need to make present the people we care about. But what are we looking at here? Gold and glass. Okay, we kind of talked about painting already in the ancient world. Now there's not a lot of painting left over. These look painterly, but I'm here to tell you that they're not. They're not painted. It's kind of amazing. So the Romans really innovated glass blowing around 50 BCE, and you would get a bubble of this cobalt blue glass, stick it down, flatten one end, so you have a nice disc, crack the dome off. Then this artist would lay down with a natural glue and adhesive a really thin layer of gold leaf. And instead of painting, instead of adding, this was subtractive. With a really fine needle-like stylus or implement, this artist would scratch away, and you can see the scratch marks if you look under magnification or if you look at it really blown up, to remove very carefully amounts of gold that leave us with this startlingly lifelike, crisp image of this woman. We don't know her name. Some of these exist and we do know what their names were. We don't know her name, but we might recognize her on the street, right? This is a startlingly crisp image. What I want to show you, though, and why I was throwing a stink before class started about the level of light in here is, if the point of these is to engage with them in a handheld way, I'm showing you the same object held up to the light with the light, pouring through it. So you go from this incredibly lifelike, realistic-looking depiction of this woman, incredibly crisp, to something that's almost ethereal, like a hologram or even a ghost. It's really rather hard to capture in images. It's one of the moments where the best that I can do to give you an idea is to show you this kind of bad series that I took when I was studying it. And not all of them are very high quality, but when you would interact with these things and look at them in the light, it's as if the portrait becomes animated itself. And you could imagine, and I'm going to leave you with this, it's like, is this comforting or is this frustrating? If we have someone here that seems so present that she could be moving, or so small we can stick her in my pocket, and yet she's still not really here. What are the limitations of the image? What are the limitations of the portrait when it comes to memory and when it comes to legacy? I wanted to show you this slide just to make my point that the intimate nature of the small private portrait, which you see another Roman gold glass example in the upper right. Spectacular, also 3rd century CE. But these continue, and you can even see what I've been talking about. How would someone have interfaced with one of these small precious objects? So that's what I choose to share with my students in A History of Art in 25 Objects for this idea of death and memory and legacy. And in the whole class, that's what we're doing, whether it's themes like manifesting power or cross-cultural exchanges, creating community, art and art in the public, art in the civic space, or creating division, art and social class. We look at works of art connected to these big, enduring themes throughout the human experience, and also, a methodological tool or two, so that when the students leave, because our world is saturated with images, it's good to know how to read them a little bit, even if we don't know the cultural context. I could talk about portraits for a long time, but I want to cut myself off there because I want to leave time for questions. So, yeah, in the back.
What is the name of the technique used to remove the gold leaf from the glass?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a technique. It's more that it was a scraping, a scratching. Yeah, I would put it in along those lines. Yeah. Other questions? Other football coaches than Holtz that I forgot? Ah, you're right, yeah. And his statue is great because it's especially Roman looking. He's on a single base and he's like going like this. You're all gonna walk out of here and never forget the football coach statues again. But his is especially Roman because it's on a tall pedestal, single isolated figure, and it's just like focusing on him. Some of them are group compositions. You've got Holtz's with players, Parsegian is with his players. Go think about how these are constructing their identities differently. Don't worry, I'm not grading you. Other questions? Yeah.
So you began the lecture by sharing with us that you want to find out how art and the human experience. What happens in cultures or in areas of the world impoverished at war where art is taken away from the human experience? What does that do to the human experience?
Yeah, that's a really sobering question, and I appreciate it. Do you mean the ability to produce new artistic expressions, or literally the destruction of art? Both.
Well, there's an Indian, the Comanche Indian tribe essentially has no art. They have no textiles, they have no pottery, they have no baskets.
Right, so this.
Art was war.
So this gets back to the idea of art is what you want it to be. If we're saying that this indigenous peoples don't make textiles, baskets, pottery, that rather, if we're remembering that Greek word, techne, that word we can translate as art, but we can also translate it as skill. This might be a more liberal interpretation of if their art was warfare. They were incredibly skilled in the making of war. Now, that's not really getting to your question. That's sort of, answering this. Yeah, what about when the realities, the sort of brutal realities of the human experience deprive us. I try to stay away from a fair amount of that in my class because ultimately I think we have enough in our day-to-day that the kids who come to my class don't need to be inundated with much more, but I do have 2 classes on art and emotion. One of them is art and joy, and one of them is art and grief, and I show them Käthe Kollwitz prints. I don't know if you are familiar. Let's go back to the beginning. I know, chaos. So the Käthe Kollwitz, please tell me I put the print on. Yeah, so she lost her son in World War I. Ooh, that's me. I was like, is time up? I haven't kept you over. Okay. Käthe Kollwitz she was already a practicing artist and printmaker before her son enrolled. He enlisted, but like so many others, he died incredibly young as my students, right? And this changed her life. And I show my students for the art and grief class the prints that she makes in her war series and the prints that Otto Dix, her contemporary, makes in his war series because he fought in World War I. And how their different traumas give rise to different kinds of expressions through the use of the styles in their prints. And that it can be, I'm trying not to sugarcoat this, but at least for Kollwitz, this was an outlet that was cathartic, and it also helped her promote an anti-war stance going forward. And so I don't want to make light of your question by saying, I think my students have a lot that's hard in the world that they see inundated from the news and the social media and what have you. And it's not that I want to shelter them. This is a difficult class to teach, but to try to remind us of where we can seek beauty when things feel very grim, that's important to me. Yeah. Any other parting questions? Yeah.
At what point do you think that it is appropriate for standards to come into play when you talk about art? Like, this is great art, this is...
Yeah. The value judgment. This is a great question because actually my second class, the theme is commodification value in the market. Yeah. Because it plays off really nicely from day one of what is art. Because you think, okay, where does value come from? I want you all to look at the very top. Oh, I know why. People are familiar. Okay, so this is a banana, but it's not a banana. It's a work of art called The Comedian. Oh, yes, appropriately titled. That sold for millions of dollars at Sotheby's. And to your question, well, where is the skill in this? Where is the, we've got Michelangelo sculptures up here. We've got incredible carving. There's a crystal up here that's done in the 10th century. Giulio Romano frescoes, de Ribera. I mean, beautiful. The calligraphy, a lot of what we would not debate. Major artistic skill over here. And then we have things that you're like, I could make that, right? I could tape a banana to the wall. In fact, I do tape a banana to the wall. And I guess my answer for you is, one, if we're going back to the idea of what is art, and art can be anything, it just needs to, someone has to articulate the reason why, and the artist here, Maurizio Cattelan, does have a why. Well, is skill, is craftsmanship, the exquisiteness of the Michelangelo Pietà groups. I mean, really mind-boggling. Not everyone wakes up, rolls out of bed, and can do this. On the other hand, what other kinds of value than skill or monetary value or material value? It could be an emotional value. One of my students talked about a painting that her grandpa made. No one really would, it wasn't particularly fabulously skilled. It wasn't going to sell at auction for $100,000, but it had emotional value to her because of her connection to the artist. And so in the same way that I want my students to think capaciously about what is art, I also challenge everyone to think whence value. Yeah, I should let you go. Oh, on time, look at that. Thank you so much.